And it's the kind of movie that hasn't had any swearing in a long time. You didn't miss the swearing and that kind of thing. What is that noise in the background that the producer is talking about? When an old Hollywood star finally speaks out, everyone pays attention. Sylvester Stallone didn't say anything for years while his name was used in late-night jokes. What we told our unhappy workers was that things could only get better. And unimportant comments on national TV. However, he finally said something about Jimmy Kimmel after being quiet for a long time. And a lot of people didn't expect it. Fans and haters are arguing about what he said. There must be something going on behind these two characters. What did Sylvester say was true? And why are so many people responding badly? The truth will come out in these revelations, which will surprise a lot of people in the business. What went well and not so well in Sylvester Stallone's work? When it comes to Hollywood stars who got big from almost nothing, Sylvester Stallone is one of the most famous people who has stuck around. Michael Sylvester Gardencio Stallone was his birth name when he came into the world on July 6, 1946, in New York City. His childhood wasn't glamorous or sure, and he didn't become famous right away when he started playing. He went to a lot of different schools in the 1950s and 1960s, such as Notre Dame Academy and Lincoln High School. After that, he studied abroad at the American College of Switzerland for a while and then went to the University of Miami for a short time. He looked into academics, but his interest in performance and sharing stories was already growing. He just didn't know where it would lead him yet. Even though it didn't directly lead to his success, his schooling gave him the background he would use in the years to come. In the early 1970s, Stallone went through the kind of trouble that artists often go through before they become famous. He did any acting job he could get, including roles in cheap films like The Party at Kitty and Studs in 1970 and The Lords of Flatbush in 1974. Around 1975 and 1976, things started to change. The draft that would change Stallone's life and career was written. He wrote the story of an amateur fighter named Rocky Balboa after seeing a Muhammad Ali fight. Studios were interested in the screenplay, but most wanted a well-known actor to play the lead part. It was important to Stallone that he play the main role, so he refused. As the 1970s and 1980s went on, Sylvester Stallone became even more famous around the world as an action star. His fame from Rocky opened doors for him, but he didn't depend on it alone. He started more movie series and played parts that made him a star in the action genre. His appearance on TV and films became a sign of physical strength, drive, and charm. People all over the world know him as one of the most recognizable faces in action films. He didn't fade away after his big break, instead, he grew his fame and impact, showing that Rocky's success wasn't just a lucky accident. Different things happened in the 1990s. Stallone kept making films, but his career didn't always go up in a straight line. Some projects went well, but others didn't live up to the hopes. These ups and downs showed how film and audience styles were changing. He didn't vanish, instead, he changed. Working and making things even when not every release was a big hit. In the 2000s, he started to move less quickly. His career went through a slower time after the busy years he had in his younger years. Some might have seen this as a sign of a decline, but Stallone wasn't done yet. He stayed in the business and looked for new chances, even if they weren't as big as the ones he had before. Things took a big turn in 2010. When Sylvester Stallone made the Expendables films and released them. He not only played the lead role in the movie, but he also directed it and put together a group of big-name action stars. The movie was a big return because it made people feel nostalgic while also giving them something new. Because the first movie did so well, there were two more, The Expendables 2, 2012, and The Expendables 3, 2014. In 2015, Stallone went back to the part that made him famous in the first place. He played Rocky Balboa again in Creed, which was a new story set in the same world that made him famous decades before. His work was praised by critics, and he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Creed 2 came out in 2018 and kept the momentum going. Stallone was in the movie and was involved in its planning and production. He showed that he knew how to change without giving up what made him great by coming back to this character while letting a new generation take the lead. His work in the Assassin's Creed films linked his early career to his later successes, which fans liked because it created a sense of consistency. As of the 2020s, Stallone is still working in films and on TV. He has not stepped away from the attention, instead, he has stayed busy, taking part in new projects and trying out new forms. He isn't limited to one decade or style of music because he is willing to keep working. From his early problems to his big break to his later changes, he has had a long and varied career in show business. Sylvester Stallone has been involved in legal and personal problems, as well as accusations and public attention, at different points in his career. Some of the most important problems started decades after the events were said to have happened. One of his claimed actions in Las Vegas came to light many years after the fact, in the 1980s, when he was at the height of his fame in Hollywood. In 2017, news spread about a police record from that time period that contained a claim made by a minor. According to what was said at the time, the accuser chose not to press charges during the first episode. Years later, when the story came up again, Stallone rejected the claim through his lawyers. It was never taken to court because there was no case to trial and no charges were made. The problem was talked about in public but never went to court. The claim that was made decades ago came up again, and it got a lot of attention because of other high-profile accusations that were being talked about at the same time. Stallone's reaction was firm in his denial. During the same time period, other claims involving women were made public in the late 2000s, mainly between 2017 and 2018. News outlets wrote about these other accounts, but no official charges were brought against anyone. In response to these stories, Stallone denied the claims and said he had done nothing wrong. The case didn't go to court, so it stayed in the world of reputation and public opinion instead of official court findings. Like many other public figures who have been accused in the past few decades, the media attention led to public discussion. But because the courts didn't do anything, the disagreement stayed based on words instead of legal decisions. Even though Stallone was accused of bad behavior, he was also involved in a very different kind of fight involving one of his most famous works. Starting in 2022, he spoke out against producer Irwin Winkler over who owned the Rocky brand and who had the right to make money off of it. While Stallone directed and wrote the first Rocky movie, he said that he did not have enough power over the franchise's long-term rights. In public, he said that the producer had too much power and kept him from making decisions and taking ownership. People talked about how Hollywood handled contracts in the 1970s, when Stallone was just starting out and trying to get his first big break. In contrast to other disputes that involved accusations, this one was about artistic rights and payment. An honor, and it wasn't through cases but through interviews and social media. The case showed the difference between legal ownership and credit for creation. Stallone made it clear that he wanted a piece of what he thought he built. Speculation about performance-enhancing drugs was another thing that made the news about Stallone. In 2007, was locked up in Australia after the police found HGH, human growth hormone, in his bags. Stallone said that the drug had been given by a doctor and was part of a health plan. Even with that answer, he was charged with a misdemeanor for bringing it into Australia illegally. He said he was guilty and paid the fines. People started talking about whether he used HGH for health reasons or for looks and physical maintenance after the event, especially since he kept doing physically demanding jobs as he got older. Although the legal issue was settled without any more problems, it added to the rumors about actors who keep their bodies in good shape after their teens. Tragedies in his own life and interest from the public marked different times in his life. He had to deal with the sudden death of his son Sage in 2012. Who died of heart trouble. Early tabloid stories suggested that drugs might have played a role, but official investigations proved that the deaths were caused by heart problems and found no evidence of drug abuse. Stallone and his family went through a hard and emotional time after the death, and the original rumors showed how quickly people can start to talk about the death of a celebrity's family member. Clarifying the cause didn't take away the pain, but it did help fight the false claims that were made in the early news. His marriage to the Danish actress Brigitte Nielsen in the mid-1980s was another time when his private life became public. The couple was married from 1985 to 1987. They were both very famous at the time, so the marriage got a lot of attention. The media mostly talked about rumors of cheating, personality clashes, and how quickly they were getting together. The breakup got a lot of attention and led to more general conversations about famous marriages at the time. Even though there were no formal charges related to the relationship, the attention it got changed how people saw his personal life and made the media even more interested in him. Over the years, Stallone's dedication to parts that were hard on the body led to onset complications. After being hit by co-star Dolph Lundgren during a fight scene while shooting Rocky IV, he got hurt badly and had to go to the hospital. These kinds of things happened in other action films with very intense stunts and fight scenes. These accidents made it clear how dangerous hands-on stunt work can be. In addition to human injuries, film productions and stunts were sometimes the subject of lawsuits. Some of these were disagreements or incidents that were reported during or after shooting. Most of them were settled or dismissed, though. These things have helped for a long time to find a balance between reality on screen and safety and legal issues. People also said bad things about Stallone that had less to do with the law and more to do with how people saw his impact and messages. Some people have said bad things about how violent his films are, especially when he was at the top of his action star job. Some people said that some portrayals added to a culture of glamorizing violence, while others said that they were just fictional performances based on stories and escaping reality. He was criticized for both what he said about his films and what he said about Hollywood society and the entertainment business. People sometimes had different responses to these comments, some agreed with them, while others thought they were rude or out of touch. The public paid even more attention to things that had to do with money. At different times, questions about tax status and wealth management came up, which led to news stories that looked into where he lived and how he made his money. People were critical and interested in these cases, but no one was charged with a crime. The talks were part of a larger trend of looking at how famous people with a lot of money handle their money and land in different states or countries. Kimmel's tough road to fame. Jimmy Kimmel's rise in the entertainment business started long before he was a late-night host. He did this by working hard, trying new things, and moving from one form of entertainment to another. He was born James Christian Kimmel on November 13, 1967, in Brooklyn, New York. His family later moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, where he spent his childhood. Growing up in a city known for its entertainment scene may have had an effect on his work, but he didn't start out in the polished world of TV. His childhood didn't directly prepare him for comedy or hosting, but it did bring him up in a place where personality and acting were always present in some way. Kimmel went to Las Vegas's Ed W. Clark High School in the 1980s. He went to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas for a short time after high school graduation before moving to Arizona State University. He never got his degree from either school. Some people may have been put at a disadvantage when they quit school to get a job without finishing. Kimmel didn't learn his skills and direction in school, he got them through work experience. This choice formed the beginning of his career and set him on the path that was different from what most people would have expected. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, he got his start in the media through radio. As Jimmy the Sports Guy, he worked for several Los Angeles radio stations, such as KUNV, KZZP, and the well-known KROQ. He often mixed humor with criticism, and he became known for the timing and energy of his improvisations. He was able to work on his voice and style on the radio, and it also led to new possibilities. The style called for quick responses. A tone that was easy to relate to and a personality that wasn't based on visuals. These were all strengths that he used in later work. Through the late 1990s, Kimmel had moved on to TV. It was in 1997 that he became the funny co-host of the Comedy Central game show Win Ben Stein's Money. His personality was a big part of the show's popularity. The way he was on TV was set by the mix of humor and knowledge. He became known in a new medium thanks to his work on the show, and it was recognized when he won an Emmy Award for Best Game Show Host. This was a big step for him from being a radio personality to a TV star, and it brought him to a lot more people. Kimmel left Win Ben Stein's Money in 2001 to focus more on developing and making TV shows. He was ready to try new formats because of the experience he got from his earlier work. The next big thing he did was one of the most important in his career. He started Jimmy Kimmel Live on ABC in 2003. The show started out small and didn't become as popular as long-running rivals right away, but Kimmel slowly made it a mainstay of late-night entertainment. He was different from others in his field because he mixed sarcasm, funny interviews, and satirical plays with a casual tone. Through the years, the show gained more viewers and better scores. From 2007 to the 2010s, Kimmel's show started doing regular bits that got a lot of attention on the internet and social media. Things like mean tweets and celebrities reading mean tweets went popular, getting famous people and people in general to enjoy the humor of online culture. The funny thing he did with Matt Damon over and over again became a signature part of the show. These segments made the show become more popular with people who don't usually watch TV and introduced his comedic style to new viewers. The air date of Jimmy Kimmel Live was pushed back in 2012. With this change, the show was now in direct competition with shows on big networks and well-known personalities like The Tonight Show. The change didn't make it less powerful, instead, it made it more well-known and helped it become one of the most popular late-night shows. Moving Kimmel to a more prominent spot confirmed her place among the most influential hosts and helped the show gain more viewers and impact. Even more people were affected by him when he became one of the most famous hosts in the entertainment business. He made the Academy Awards, which is one of the most watched award shows in the world, more funny in 2017. His opening speech and the way he handled the event as a whole got him high marks and good reviews. Because of how well it did, he came back as host in 2018, even though he had to deal with the fallout from the mistake that happened with the Best Picture reveal the previous year. He handled the situation with humor and calmness, which added to his image on live TV for being flexible and professional. Kimmel said he would be taking a short break in 2020 after leading his nightly show for almost 20 years. While the show was going on, the stop was one of the few long breaks he had taken. He came back later that same year and kept working, keeping up with other production and TV tasks while being on air. Because he worked in late-night TV for so long, he was one of the most reliable people in the format. In the 2020s, he will still be hosting Jimmy Kimmel Live and will also be hosting and creating more TV shows and events. Some of the things he does for a living are guest hosting, charity programs, and award shows. Kimmel's personal life has also been in the news, along with his work in television. In 1988, he married Gina Maddie. They had 2 children together before they split up in 2002. He got married to Molly McNerney in 2013. She is a writer and producer for Jimmy Kimmel Live. They have 2 kids together. His family life and his public role sometimes overlap, especially when he talks about personal things on his show. He talked about his newborn son's congenital heart condition in 2017, which was one of the most important cases. He told the story in public, talking about his worries and how thankful he was that his child got medical help. Because he talked about it openly, he became more vocal about health issues, especially those that affect kids and families going through similar problems getting help. Jimmy Kimmel's long career in show business has not been free of criticism. As he became more well-known, people started to look more closely at his past and present actions. Some of the most talked about problems came up in sketches, performances, and other work he did in the early part of his career. Things that later viewers and cultural norms found offensive or wrong. When these moments came up again, they started a new conversation about humor, duty, and how people expect entertainment to change. Insensitive acts about race from the 1990s and 2000s caused one of the biggest problems. Old videos of Kimmel wearing blackface to impersonate NBA player Karl Malone and other black public figures during his time with The Man Show and other comedy shows show him doing this. When these portrayals came back a long time later, they caused a lot of backlash because blackface has a very offensive and painful past in American entertainment. In 2020, Kimmel apologized to the public for his actions, saying that he understood how these shows hurt people and felt bad about taking part in them. With the apology, he tried to ease the worries of viewers and reviewers who didn't see how his past comedic choices could fit with his current public image. In 2013, there was another event on Jimmy Kimmel Live that got a lot of negative feedback. During a sketch, a child said something that made it sound like people in China should be killed. They used the words, "kill everyone in China." Even though the line was said in the middle of a comedy segment, it caused Asian American groups and worried viewers to protest. Advocacy groups planned protests and called for people to be held responsible. ABC and Kimmel both said they were sorry and took the piece off the air. The debate showed how sensitive it is to make jokes about race and global politics, especially when they seem to make violence seem silly or reinforce negative stereotypes. Kimmel's earlier work on The Man Show has also been looked at again. Some viewers now think that the show's humor treated women like objects or didn't care about them. Women were often put in sexually suggestive parts or situations in recurring skits that were meant to be funny by using gender stereotypes and sexual innuendo. As conversations about sexism and how women are portrayed in media have grown, these sketches have come back to the public's focus. Some people who don't like the show say that it shows how more people were okay with humor that used women as visual or comedy props at the time. The content fit with the show's style and tone, but it later became a point of contention in discussions about how entertainers dealt with gender problems. Instead of these debates about bigger cultural issues, Kimmel's ongoing feud with actor Matt Damon has been a source of entertainment. It started as a running joke to pretend to bump Damon from the end of the show with the phrase, "Sorry, Matt Damon, we ran out of time." This turned into a longer, funnier plot. Through planned fights and sketches, they kept up the gag. Many people laughed at the joke and got that it was comedy, but some comments suggested that some parts might have gone too far or been misunderstood by people who didn't know the joke's background. Even though the feud was made up, it showed how satire can sometimes blur the line between comedy and hostility, based on how aware the audience is. In addition to being a late-night host, Kimmel also talked about politics on his show. He has used his position over the years to talk about things like healthcare, gun control, and politics in the White House. People agreed with and disagreed with these comments. Some, especially in the conservative media, thought they were biased or too political for a late-night comedy show. Some critics said that artists should not take sides, even though Kimmel said that his views were based on his own experiences, especially when talking about his son's health. Others saw his comments as a natural extension of his role as a public figure with a lot of power and duty. In 2017, he hosted the Academy Awards, which was one of the most talked about events in his career. It is well known that during the ceremony, La La Land was wrongly named Best Picture instead of Moonlight, which was actually the winner. Even though Kimmel wasn't to blame for the envelope mistake, people had different opinions about how he handled the situation. Some people praised Moore for staying calm in a tough situation, while others thought Moore could have done more to make things clear faster. The event became a famous moment in Oscars history, and it was tied to one of the biggest public mistakes the award show has ever made. Kimmel made a big splash in the public eye that same year when he gave an emotional speech about his newborn son's congenital heart problem. He used his position to push for easy access to health care and to stress the importance of covering medical costs for families and children. People who saw him spoke highly of how sincere and honest he was in his speech, as well as his willingness to speak out about an important problem in public. Some lawmakers and commentators, on the other hand, didn't like what he said and said that entertainers shouldn't be involved in policy debates or that what he said was politically motivated. People had different reactions, which showed how personal experience and political interpretation are often at odds with each other in public debate. Behind the scenes, Jimmy Kimmel Live, like many other long-running TV shows, has been the subject of stories about difficult working conditions or disagreements between writers and staff. Concerns made by people who worked on or near the show were sometimes written about in trade publications. Though there have been no big lawsuits or scandals that have been confirmed by the authorities. These stories aren't just about Kimmel's show. The stress of making something every night can cause stress at work. More information about how TV production works behind the scenes and how staff experiences can affect how people see a host's leadership was shared during the talks. Kimmel makes fun of Stallone's support of Trump. Jimmy Kimmel's comments on famous people have often been a mix of comedy, observation, and criticism. People paid a lot of attention to his comments about Sylvester Stallone, which were a mix of fun, politics, and fame. Building on his history of talking about current events in his monologues, Kimmel focused on what Stallone said about making a bold comparison between former President Donald Trump and a key person in American history. Kimmel's comedic style worked well with the situation, and his reaction showed that he often questions public statements that he thinks are over the top or silly. The moment started when Sylvester Stallone spoke at an event at Mar-a-Lago. His dramatic delivery of his words caught people's attention. It wasn't hard for Stallone to praise Trump. In his opening, he said that George Washington set a standard that would change the world, and then he added, and guess what? The second George Washington showed up. Excellent work. In the statement, Trump was compared to the first president of the United States, making him seem like a historical figure whose actions would change the course of events around the world. Even though Stallone spoke with respect, his words left room for response and criticism. This is especially true for commentators and entertainers. This was brought up by Kimmel during a rant on Jimmy Kimmel Live. In his answer, he used humor to deal with political rhetoric, as he always does, and he started by making the comparison. He said that George Washington was the founder of our country. Ernest Trump's dad is Donald Trump. That makes a big difference. The play on words in the line pushed back against the parallel. By using Trump's children as a point of comparison, they are pointing out the difference between Washington's image as a leader of the country and Trump's. Kimmel used a tone that was a mix of mocking and humor, playing on the ridiculousness he saw in Stallone's praise. Then he hit Stallone again, but this time it was meant for him instead of Trump. He told Rocky, "I guess those blows to the head were real after all." Referring to Stallone's famous movie character, the comment showed knowledge of Stallone's legacy and doubt about his political support, suggesting that the comparison could be caused by poor judgment or excessive enthusiasm. Kimmel often mixes references to pop culture with political analysis to bring out contradictions or overstatements. This comment fit with that style. Kimmel's speech didn't end with Stallone. He applied the criticism to a bigger time when Trump and other famous people were involved. A picture that went around the internet showed Trump, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Elon Musk, and Donald Trump Jr. eating McDonald's together on Trump's private jet. "There's a lot going on in this picture," Kimmel said to set the mood for the jokes that would follow. "It's like The Last Supper, but everyone is Judas." The line brought to mind one of the most famous scenes in history, showing how different the serious original scene was from the relaxed fast food setting and the people involved. He then named parts of the picture with his usual mix of sarcasm and comments. When he talked about politicians and famous people, he said, "Little elf on a shelf, Mike Johnson popping his head in there. RFK with a Coke, 10 McNuggets, big fries, and a quarter-pounder with cheese. That's a meal that goes from farm to toilet." The word "farm to toilet" was a joke about how much fast food people eat, making the picture seem like a sign of indulgence rather than leadership. Kimmel used the opportunity to both make fun of the picture and say something about how things work in Trump's group. He said that only Donald Trump would make his new health czar eat McDonald's. That's what he does. These are tests of subservience that he gives. In this way of looking at things, sharing a fast food meal was part of a bigger symbolic hierarchy. This meant that a funny comment could also be a way to criticize authority and show loyalty. He kept talking about it by making links to different people in Trump's circle, giving each one a job or a symbolic test. Mike Johnson needs to fight. RFK needs to eat Atkins. Matt Gaetz has to go on a date with a woman he didn't pay for. J.D. Vance was at home, sitting on his couch. Please excuse me. Every example he used at home on his couch was a direct quote about a public event, accusation, or stereotype about the person. In a way that his fans have come to expect, the comments mixed humor with political criticism. For this specific monologue, Kimmel did not make Stallone the only subject. So, he started by talking about what Stallone said and then moved on to talk about how other celebrities and politicians have praised Trump in public. He used Stallone's speech as an example of a larger point he was making about how far some recommendations go when they put modern people next to historical figures. Kimmel didn't criticize in a serious way. Instead, he used comedic frames to question the sincerity or logic behind statements.